So I feel like this is a holy space and the work we've done, and it remains here, it will never go away. And so I feel like there's this transfer of spirit from generation to generation, and it'll be sad to just destroy that.
As a city evolves, transforming sacred spaces into new uses is inevitable. As religious congregations dwindle in size or move outside of the city, the iconic worship spaces are left behind.
If we don't reuse some of the churches that are now in disuse, then they will tumble into neglect and we will lose them.
Through adaptive reuse, 2 projects on Capitol Hill have brought new life and new purpose to these historic buildings. The Gothic structure of the former Eastern Presbyterian Church now houses 6 residences. 2 blocks away, the sanctuary, formerly known as the 9th Street Christian Church, is now 30 condominiums. Eastern Presbyterian Church constructed their house of worship at Maryland Avenue and 6th Street Northeast in 1892. Designed by prominent Washington architect Appleton P. Clark, the Gothic-style edifice is constructed of Potomac bluestone with limestone trim. It's known as the Lighthouse on the Hill because of its 130-foot-tall bell tower that soars above the surrounding residential row houses. The Eastern Presbyterian congregation called the building home for more than 60 years. With a dwindling population, the church sold the building to the Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church in 1956. 40 years later, the church changed ownership again to the African American Catholic congregation, who eventually moved out of the city.
You have to look at a building that was designed for one function and figure out how to re-envision it for an entirely different function. We really looked at some of the most beautiful features, some of the windows, some of the plaster work, how to best enhance that, and how to make sure that each of the units could have something incredibly unique and special about that unit.
The tower is now a communal space with sweeping views of many of DC's most prominent landmarks.
It fits right into the landscape. You have your row houses that are all historic. You have your storefronts that are somewhat new, but kind of still fit into the landscape. And then you have this beautiful church. I think it really just, it holds that charm very well.
Built in 1898 by August Getz, the Gothic Revival Church was home to the 9th Street Christian Church congregation until the early 1960s. The Second Great Migration brought changes to the neighborhood demographics, and the building was sold to the Way of the Cross Church of Christ, who worshiped within its walls for the next 50 years.
The building's really an extraordinary building. You come upon it and it really has a great prominence and stature on the corner, and is characterized by just incredible architecture, from the soaring bell tower to the huge stained glass windows.
Unfortunately, those stained glass windows had reached the end of their lifespan. Each window was carefully reassembled by hand, using original glass and historically accurate reproductions. Vision glass was added in strategic places to connect the residences to the cityscape.
We restored the building facades, masonry facades. Inside, we saved many of the masonry walls, brick walls. We opened them up, we exposed them, removing plaster. We found that there were stone accents in those walls. We have a dialogue between the historic building and the modern use of the building.
The transformation of these 2 historic churches into residential units has solidified their continued relevance to the Capitol Hill community.
When there are opportunities like this to take a structure that is so ingrained in the shared history of that neighborhood and the fabric of that neighborhood and restore it to something new that will sustain it for another century, is a great way to deal with changing neighborhoods, changing preferences, changing populations, while not ignoring the great history of the city.